Something feels different around the Minnesota Vikings, and it isn't just because training camp is only a couple of weeks away. There is a growing feeling that this could be the moment when Kevin O'Connell's team finally takes a major step forward, but not necessarily for the reasons everyone has been talking about. While the quarterback competition has dominated headlines for months, there are several other developments quietly unfolding behind the scenes that could end up defining the entire 2026 season. Some of them could completely reshape the identity of this football team, and by the end of training camp, we should have a much clearer picture of what the Vikings are truly planning. One of the biggest questions entering camp has nothing to do with who throws the football. Instead, it is whether Kevin O'Connell is finally ready to evolve his offense. Over the past few seasons, Minnesota has built its identity around an aggressive passing attack, but there are strong reasons to believe that philosophy could begin changing. Training camp practices may offer the first real clues. If reporters begin describing heavier personnel packages, more formations featuring multiple tight ends, or a dramatically different approach to the running game, that will be one of the most important storylines to monitor. But before we continue, let me know, are you excited for this season? Write in the comments, and don't forget to click the like button if you're a die-hard Vikings fan. Now, the Vikings invested heavily during the offseason, and there is an expectation that those investments should immediately produce results. While quarterback play has often been blamed for offensive inconsistency, there is also pressure on O'Connell himself. At this stage of his tenure, simply relying on improved quarterback performance is not enough. His offense needs to become more balanced, more physical, and significantly more effective on the ground. Looking at the roster, there are very few excuses remaining. The offensive line appears stronger than it has been in years. Although there are understandable concerns about the health of Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill after recent injuries, the overall talent across the unit is difficult to ignore. Minnesota has invested premium draft capital into the offensive line, while also committing major financial resources to solidify the interior. On paper, this projects as one of the better offensive lines in the NFL, provided the group stays healthy throughout the season. The improvements extend well beyond the offensive line. The running back room now features what looks like an extremely intriguing combination. Aaron Jones brings veteran experience and proven production, while Jordan Mason may quietly be one of the league's most underrated running backs. His production last season flew under the radar despite approaching 800 rushing yards and scoring 6 touchdowns. Advanced metrics paint an even more impressive picture. Mason consistently generated positive yardage despite facing loaded defensive fronts and stacked boxes at one of the highest rates in football. Those numbers suggest there may be another level waiting to be unlocked if Minnesota's offensive system creates more favorable rushing opportunities. The organization also made several subtle moves that point toward a greater commitment to the running game. Adding one of the league's premier run-blocking wide receivers gives the offense another physical element on the perimeter. Bringing in Frank Smith, who has earned an outstanding reputation as one of football's best run-game coordinators, further reinforces the belief that this offense may be preparing for a philosophical shift. Drafting fullback Max Bredesen only adds more evidence that Minnesota wants greater flexibility in heavier offensive formations. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of the entire discussion revolves around the quarterback position itself. While the quarterback battle remains the headline story, there is another reason why it directly impacts the running game. A true dual-threat quarterback forces defenses to account for an additional runner on every snap. Across the NFL, players like Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Josh Allen have consistently demonstrated how quarterback mobility creates lighter defensive boxes, opens rushing lanes, and forces defenders into impossible decisions. If Minnesota fully embraces that style of offense, the impact could extend far beyond the passing game. That possibility alone makes the opening days of training camp incredibly important. Every practice report, every observation from beat reporters, every formation installed during team drills could reveal whether Kevin O'Connell is simply making minor adjustments or whether he is preparing to unveil an offense that looks fundamentally different from anything Vikings fans have seen under his leadership. On the defensive side of the football, another storyline carries enormous significance. First-round defensive tackle Cale Banks enters training camp with considerable expectations after being selected with the 18th overall pick in the 2026 NFL Draft. His progress has been closely monitored after recovering from a broken foot that limited portions of off-season activities. During minicamp and organized team activities, Banks was gradually increasing his workload while continuing his rehabilitation. The expectation is that he will be fully healthy by the time training camp officially begins. If that proves true, Banks immediately becomes one of the most important players to watch throughout every practice session. Coaches already believe his ceiling is exceptionally high, and if reports begin emerging that he is consistently winning one-on-one drills or disrupting plays against Minnesota's offensive line, excitement surrounding this rookie could grow rapidly. His development would not only strengthen the defensive interior, but could completely elevate the ceiling of Brian Flores' defensive front. The Vikings already possess several intriguing pieces along the defensive line. Jalen Redmond has established himself as a reliable contributor, while Levi Drake Rodriguez continues developing into another promising rotational option. Dominique Orange provides size capable of occupying multiple blockers and creating opportunities for the linebackers behind him. Add a productive rookie like Cale Banks into that mix, and suddenly Minnesota's defensive line could emerge as one of the NFL's most underrated units entering the season. The potential combination of established veterans and ascending young talent creates enormous optimism. But training camp will ultimately determine whether those expectations are realistic. Every snap Banks takes, every practice rep against starting offensive linemen, and every positive report from observers could signal that Minnesota has found another foundational building block for the future. Before we continue with the remaining major storylines surrounding contract extensions, possible roster additions, the edge rusher situation, and the quarterback competition itself, I want to hear from you. Do you believe Kevin O'Connell is finally preparing to transform this offense into a more balanced run-first attack? And how confident are you that Cale Banks will make an immediate impact during his rookie season? Share your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation is only getting started. As exciting as the potential schematic changes may be, there is another storyline that could quietly shape the Vikings for years to come, and it has nothing to do with what happens on the practice field. General Manager Nolan Teasley now faces several major contract decisions, and the way he handles them could determine whether this roster remains together long enough to compete for championships. The first name that immediately stands out is Jordan Addison. Every season, the wide receiver market continues to explode, with elite receivers signing contracts that reset expectations across the league. If the Vikings truly believe Addison is part of their long-term foundation, waiting may only make his next contract significantly more expensive. His chemistry within the offense continues to develop, and securing him before another massive jump in receiver salaries could prove to be one of the smartest financial moves the organization makes. There are always considerations surrounding player development and off-field consistency. But from a pure football perspective, the sooner Minnesota reaches an agreement, the more flexibility they could preserve for the future. Another veteran whose future deserves attention is Brian O'Neill. Few right tackles in football have been as dependable over the past several seasons. Although Minnesota invested another premium draft pick along the offensive line, replacing a proven veteran is never an easy decision. Offensive tackles are extending their careers longer than ever before, and O'Neal continues to perform at a high level whenever healthy. Rather than allowing him to approach free agency, a shorter extension could provide stability without creating long-term financial risk. Maintaining continuity along the offensive line is especially important if the organization truly intends to build a more physical offensive identity. Then there is Jalen Redmond. Defensive tackle contracts have skyrocketed across the NFL, making every productive season increasingly valuable. If Redmond continues progressing and delivers another strong campaign, his asking price could rise dramatically. Minnesota has an opportunity to act before that happens. Locking in one of the defensive front's most productive interior players before another breakout season could ultimately save millions while keeping one of the defense's most important building blocks in place. Andrew Van Ginkel presents perhaps the most difficult decision of them all. There is little doubt about his impact whenever he is on the field. His versatility, leadership, and production have been critical components of Brian Flores's defensive system. However, age and durability inevitably become part of the conversation. Minnesota must decide whether to invest in another contract or begin transitioning toward younger options already developing within the roster. It is not a question of talent. It is simply one of timing and long-term roster construction. While those contract situations will dominate conversations behind closed doors, another issue may force the Vikings to make a move before the regular season even begins. The depth at edge rusher continues to generate discussion throughout the fan base and among analysts covering the team. The starting combination appears strong, but behind those starters, there are legitimate concerns. Relying heavily on inexperienced depth throughout a 17-game season can become extremely risky, especially at one of football's most physically demanding positions. If injuries strike, Minnesota could suddenly find itself asking unproven players to handle significant defensive snaps during meaningful games. That reality explains why speculation surrounding another edge rusher continues growing. Whether through free agency or the trade market, adding another experienced pass rusher would strengthen the entire defensive rotation while reducing the pressure on younger players. It would also provide valuable insurance if injuries become an issue later in the season. Several veteran options remain available, each bringing different strengths. Some specialize as designated pass rushers capable of contributing in obvious passing situations. Others offer experience within similar defensive systems and could immediately fit into Brian Flores's aggressive scheme. Regardless of the specific player, the logic behind adding another veteran becomes increasingly convincing the closer training camp gets. Still, every conversation eventually circles back to the biggest storyline surrounding the Minnesota Vikings: the quarterback battle. Ironically, the most fascinating aspect may not actually be who wins it. Instead, the real question could be how quickly Kevin O'Connell decides to end the competition. There has been constant debate surrounding Kyler Murray and J. McCarthy. But based on everything seen throughout the offseason, the expectation remains that Murray enters training camp as the favorite. That does not diminish McCarthy's progress. In fact, reports from organized team activities and minicamp suggest the young quarterback has made noticeable improvements. His mechanics appear cleaner. His footwork has become more consistent. Coaches have reportedly been pleased with his ability to layer throws with improved touch, while still maintaining the arm strength that made him such an intriguing prospect. Those are meaningful developments. Quarterbacks in their early 20s are expected to improve, and McCarthy appears to be doing exactly that. His growth should encourage every Vikings fan, because it reinforces the belief that he could eventually become the franchise quarterback the organization envisioned when drafting him. However, development and readiness are not always the same thing. There is still a significant difference between showing progress during off-season practices and consistently performing against starting NFL defenses. That gap is why many believe Kyler Murray remains the logical choice to begin the season as QB1. If that proves to be the case, attention quickly shifts toward Kevin O'Connell's decision-making process. Will he allow the competition to continue throughout multiple preseason games? Will he wait until the final week before naming a starter? Or will he recognize early in training camp that Murray has separated himself and officially end the discussion before unnecessary distractions develop? That announcement may become one of the defining moments of the summer because once a starting quarterback is established, the coaching staff can fully focus on preparing the offense for Week 1. When training camp finally opens, every practice will matter. Fans will be watching to see whether the offense truly becomes more balanced. They will monitor every update involving Cale Banks and the defensive line. They will follow every rumor surrounding possible contract extensions. They will pay close attention to any veteran edge rusher linked to Minnesota. And above all else, they will wait for Kevin O'Connell to reveal who will lead this football team onto the field when the regular season begins. Those answers won't come all at once, but over the coming weeks, each practice and every report will begin revealing exactly what kind of team the Minnesota Vikings are preparing to become in 2026. If even half of these storylines develop the way many inside the organization hope, this could be one of the most important training camps the franchise has experienced in years. Now I want to hear from you, Vikings fans. Which storyline are you watching most closely heading into training camp? Is it the offense, Cale Banks, the quarterback battle, the possible contract extensions, or the search for another edge rusher? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I read every single one of them. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest Minnesota Vikings news, rumors, and training camp updates. SKOL, and I'll see you in the next one.